guys, so now that we've sat with Kerry O'Quinn about his origins and the accomplishments, we wanted to take a look into the future of Fangoria. As some of you may or may not know, Sonnier Estate recently picked up Fangoria back in February to put out print again. So today with us, we have producer of many films, including Bone Tomahawk, Puppet Master, The Littlest Reich, Dark Was the Night, The Scribbler, plus a ton of Steve Austin films like Damage, The Stranger, Hunt to Kill, and many more. He's also in charge of Sonnier Estate, as well as the new Fangoria. Welcome to Beyond the Void Horror Podcast, Dallas Sonnier.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on, man. I'm so glad that I reached out to you.
Me too.
You have a really interesting array of different work that you've been working on, a lot of different achievements that you have made throughout the years. And I know for a fact, because we talked before, you're a huge movie buff, and you can tell. I mean, what got you started on that path, like as the earliest age?
I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and I had a really cool dad who bought me a Playboy. And believe it or not, I read the articles in the magazine, and there was an article about Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, who at the time they were producing Top Gun, Days of Thunder, all kinds, The Rock, all kinds of my favorite movies when I was a teenager. And I thought, whoa, what is this movie producer job? I want that job. And so I started to research everything, and I ended up honing in on USC Film School. And when I graduated college, I went to USC Film School and got into the business. But it was just it was a love of movies and realizing that I could make a business out of it. Because I was definitely not a writer, I was definitely not a director, I was not an artist. I was more of a business mind and left-brained. And when I realized you could do the business of movies, I was hooked.
Right. Yeah. And obviously, you're a big fan of Steve Austin. So you gotta tell me a little bit about that. How that because you did like I think it was 8 films.
Yeah, we did 9 films with Steve. Okay. Most of them I'm credited on, but for some reasons, like Canadian content rules, we were only allowed to credit one of us at a time or things like that. So. But anyway, we did 9 movies with Steve. I had a partnership with Steve and another producer named Jack Heller, who I was partnered in Caliber Media with. And it was a really good run. Steve is just such an awesome guy, and he's actually a pretty terrific movie star. He just has such a great presence, and he really put his heart and soul into these movies. And we're proud of some of them, and we're less proud of others. And some of them are Mystery Science Theater bad. But like Damage, for instance, is really pretty good. And it was a situation where we met Steve at Comic-Con, of all places, and he had just made the movie Condemned, and He wasn't really happy with his current situation in movies, and we pitched him this sort of overall business strategy of trying to replace Seagal and Van Damme, who both were, a little bit older and kind of played out in the market a little bit, and we did it. We went and we did it. We went up to Vancouver and we shot 9 movies in 4 years, and it was a great run. And we helped Steve transition into podcasting and reality TV, and that was the end of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I like some of those movies, so I don't know. I haven't seen them all, I'll be honest, but I definitely do like some of them. I liked Condemned as well. So
yeah, me too.
Now I do. Me too. Speaking of horror a little bit more, I heard that you're a big fan of the Lost Boys. Is that right?
I am the president of the Lost Boys fan club, if there was one. It's interesting. My parents would really let me see most R-rated movies, even from an early age. But for whatever reason, the Lost Boys was semi off limits to me. Now, granted, I was 7, but like my dad took me to Predator 2 when I was 9 in the theater, so it wasn't like they were censoring what movies I watched. And the Lost Boys, just because of that poster and how like sexy and scary it was, they were really uncomfortable with it. And so I probably didn't see it for maybe I certainly didn't see it in theaters, and I didn't get to see it for a couple of years until video. And when I saw it, I actually convinced my mom to buy the VHS tape from the local Banana Video in Dallas, and it was a local video store, and it was $87 or whatever for the tape, and
right,
I watched it every single day. And in fact, I used to come downstairs and act out the Bernard Herrmann, TV guide and Second Shelf and the Dr. Peppers and all. I used to do the whole thing. I memorized the whole movie from beginning to end. I think it was just that at the time I wasn't necessarily an outcast, so I really couldn't call myself a geek or a nerd, but I wasn't popular. I wasn't the cool kids. I wasn't, the sports jock. And I was somewhere in between, and I felt like the Michael character, the Jason Patric character, is kind of that guy. He falls in between. He's sort of a loner, an outcast. He's trying to do something a little different. He feels more adult than maybe his other peers and students and things like that. So that I just really responded to him. And hopefully one day I'll get to work with Jason Patric just to bug him on set for 30 days. But yeah, that movie was very important to me and still is.
Well, you got to tell me, what's your favorite quote?
Well, it's either the TV guide, the monologue, the grandpa monologue,
okay,
or it's the Corey Feldman, Jameson Newlander scene where Corey Haim walks into the comic book store and they're saying, we fight for truth, justice, and the American way. And Corey Haim looks at him and he's like, yeah, sure. It's just so good. It's pretty good. So good. It's the best. Oh,
I always thought
it.
the what is it, Death by Stereo was pretty funny too.
Death by Stereo is great. It's all so great. And then at the end, he's like, join us. My blood is in your veins. And then Jason Patric says, so is mine. And then he throws him on the antlers. It's so good. It's so good.
Now, have you always been a fan of horror? I mean, have you always had
I have.
Okay.
Yes. I had a babysitter show me Jaws when I was probably 4 or 5 years old. It fucked me up for life. I really can't go too far in the ocean where my feet don't touch. And from there, I watched Jason and Freddy and all of them, all the Halloween movies. I was consuming this stuff like crazy, and a lot of full moon movies. I was really into Puppet Master and Subspecies and Trancers and all. And I would go to the video store not every day, but almost every day, and I would rent probably 2 movies a day. I'd say I probably rented 10 movies a week minimum, and watched them all and returned them the next day. I would either bike to the Blockbuster or I would have my mom take me, and she would hand me her Timex, and she would put a stopwatch on there, a timer on there, 20 minutes. And if I didn't get back to the car by the time the 20 minutes lapsed, she would drive off, and I would have to walk home.
That's funny, man.
She would literally bring books and magazines to the Blockbuster and wait out in the car and just read while I roamed the aisles. So yeah, I was obsessed.
You've acquired Fangoria. What are your earliest memories of the magazine?
My earliest memories of the magazine were at Taylor's bookstore, B. Dalton bookstore. All of those bookstores in the mall. Remember, there was KB Toys in the mall and those smaller bookstores.
Right.
And what I remember is that they were sort of taboo. They were almost like looking through it was like looking through a Playboy or something. And I never had a subscription, but I would always buy it at the newsstand. And I was fascinated by the fact that movies could be made, right? That because you're a kid and you don't really think about how did this happen? How did this come about? And so the behind the scenes and the access, and it was more to me because I was so young when the magazine's older than me, and when I was reading it in the 80s, it would be more about the photos and seeing that Jason Voorhees sitting in a chair in the video village, not on screen. Just funny stuff like that. It sort of registered to me that movies were made, and they were made by a team of people, and it was something that people worked together as a team to make. So that was fascinating to me. That's probably my earliest memory.
Obviously, you run and own Sonnier Estate, which then acquired Fangoria and several other publications from the Starlog, right?
That's right. So Kerry O'Quinn and Norm Jacobs were the original owners. They sold the magazine and the brands to a company called Mo Green. Mo Green split up, and one of the partners in Mo Green, named Thomas DeFeo, ended up acquiring the rights in his corporate divorce with his partners, and Tom was the president of Fangoria from the mid-2000s, maybe '06, until last year when I acquired it from him. And the brand Fangoria, also Starlog and Gorezone, and while we have big plans for those two as well, we have to get Fangoria right, and so we're starting. It's not even baby steps, it's actually big giant steps, but we're starting with Fangoria to make sure that we put it out properly, that it's really well received, and then we'll get into the Starlog of Gorezone and all kinds of stuff like that afterwards.
On a personal level, why did you choose to pick this up?
Okay, so the true story is that as proud of Sonnier Estate as I am, and I think we make great movies, and I think that the company is terrific. Nobody's ever heard of us, and when we go out and release a movie, we're asking people to trust a brand and a company that they have never experienced before, and so that's a big ask in today's market. It's a very crowded market, and you're always looking for shortcuts. And shortcut is not a bad word. It's just a strategic word. And we got the rights to reboot the Puppet Master franchise. And when I got those rights, I realized, holy shit, it makes life so much easier when you call people and you're running around with a brand that people recognize. And it was... certainly I understood the value of the brand and the IP, but I never in a trillion years thought it would be that level of difference. And so I said to myself, I want to make low-budget horror films. I want to make practical effects-driven movies. I don't want this CGI garbage.
Thank God.
I want to make these really I'll make a PG-13 movie, no problem if it's meant to be. But if this movie needs to be R-rated or borderline NC-17, I want to just make it. I don't want anyone to tell me I can't. And the only way to do that is to raise money and build out an infrastructure to which you can release these projects. And so acquiring Fangoria was a way for us to instantly validate our products, of which we're very proud of. And now we have a loyal fan base and an engaged fan base. And what we're doing is, by relaunching the magazine in a really thoughtful way, from the writers that we've employed to the design we're employing to the fact that we are taking care of all of the subscribers in the past that got stiffed by previous regime, we're trying to resurrect this brand in a big way. And so it's the magazine, it's movies, it's books, it's great social media, it's all kinds of stuff, just adding value to people's lives and resurrecting an iconic horror brand in today's digital world. And part of the fun of that is creating this analog experience around the magazine itself. So this is just a real awesome way to build upon an existing audience. And look, there's a legacy play being the person who resurrects Fangoria. I mean, it feels good. I'm not going to lie about it. It feels awesome. So
they're part of something big for the horror community, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked previously a little bit about some of the changes that you're going to be making. You already mentioned just now that you were trying to win back some of the old fans because, to be honest, Fangoria at the end of it, the previous owner, didn't really fulfill any of the subscriptions and such. And what are you doing to some of the changes that you're making to kind of reach out and get those people back?
Well, what was really surprising to me, when we took the company over, we also took over all the email accounts. And I went through them and looked at the various emails. And what I noticed was that the employees and the editors and the writers, they were basically sent out on the front lines to combat all of the angry readers, people who, either got paid for a subscription and didn't receive one, or didn't receive actual hard copy print magazines and instead got digital issues, all kinds of messed up stuff. And I just felt like not only did this magazine not fulfill its obligations, it also wasted for months and years at a time these people's attention and time by giving them the runaround on email, which is really frustrating. So what you're doing is you're compounding the anger towards a brand that people really don't want to be mad at. And that was devastating to me. And so I made sure when we acquired the magazine that we had the financial fortitude to be able to offer a complimentary 1-year subscription to anyone that got screwed over by the previous publisher. Right. No questions asked. Leave your receipts in the drawer. It's just the honor system, right? If people are going to take advantage of us, the karma police will get them one day. But this is to take care of the fans and make things right. And the response has been amazing. We're still getting the word out there. And, the amount of complimentary subscriptions that we've had to give out is in the thousands. But honestly, it's worth every penny because these fans and these readers they've been loyal to this brand forever, and they want to come back to the family, and this is the best way to do it. So they're going to get blown away by 4 new issues, and then at the end, they're going to want to resubscribe. It's natural. We won't get everybody, but I think we'll get the super majority of them because we made this effort and then brought them back in, and then they're going to be surprised by how cool the new issues are. I mean, they're so cool. I can hardly handle it.
And from what we've discussed, you've explained to me that this isn't just a magazine, guys. Okay, like they're actually going out there and making essentially a book quarterly.
Yeah. I described it the other day as north of a magazine, south of a coffee table book. And what I mean by that, the original Fangorias were 60 to 70 pages. They had a saddle stitch, which means those 2 staples on the side, and they were full of ads. Some of the ads are good, and some of the ads are actual dreck. And the products and the design and everything. And I really said, we cannot just do this again. There's a reason why it went out of business in the first place. And we decided to go a different route. So the card stock that we're using on the cover and then the inside is thicker than anything anyone's ever experienced in terms of the horror movie magazines. The perfect binding edge will be really unique, and it will make it more collectible. And then we have a graphic designer who has created this amazing look. I would say it's very retro in its design because it's a throwback to the original primary colors looks of the 80s Fangorias, but then we have brought that look into the modern age. So I think we're going to impress the most diehard old school fans, but then capture the new fans as well who are going to be excited by the design. I just think it's a beautiful book, and it's really heavy. It's also 100 pages cover to cover, so it's a beast. It's a real beast. It certainly drives up the shipping costs, but that's just that. So
well, you got to come out strong, right? So it's like,
well, that's right, and also we're bringing back the old school contributors. Gingold, Timpone, all kinds of great people like that. We've got a cross-section of current journalists working in the space. We have contributions from people like Sam Zimmerman and Ashley Blackwell and all kinds of great people who are in the current Hollywood writer community and filmmaker community. And then we obviously can't give away the names just yet, but we have like 4 or 5 A-list filmmakers who are contributing pieces to this new edition. And, whether we put those all in the first issue or not is what we're going through. That's a process we're going through right now. But these are huge names, and they're writing articles for Fangoria. So it's so cool, man. This is like, I would never have been able to meet the people that I've met in our film community had it not been for this acquisition and what this magazine meant to so many people in their earlier stages of their career, as well as mine. And that's a great mantle to take on, and I think we're doing a really good job with it so far.
I've noticed that you guys are going to be working on breaking news. It's like making the news, more than just reiterating the news from other sources. So you guys are going to be basically putting stuff out that people will get a first inside look into something that nobody else has talked about.
That's absolutely correct. And there are tons of great websites out there, Bloody Disgusting, Dread Central, and so on, who do a phenomenal job already of covering that news cycle. So we're in no way competitive to them. In a way, we're not even competitive to the other print magazines because they're also in a more frequent cycle than we are. And we're not worried about things that are necessarily as time sensitive, like daily news, like trailer drops, things like that, even reviews to a certain extent, which are super time sensitive. Our product is more collectible. I love the word evergreen. Not every single piece in our issue is an evergreen piece. Some of them are clearly timed to movies that are coming out this fall and things like that. But for the most part, you could pick up this book at any point in time and review these pieces, and they're not going to feel outdated. So that's and there's some things that we're putting in here in this first issue, certainly that no one's ever heard of before, and I think that's also really exciting.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Now, when can and how can people get their hands on these?
We have set up a subscription-only drive right now, first and foremost. That's not to say that one day we won't be selling single issues in stores. That's our goal, is to do so, and we're working out those situations right now. And it's not to say that one day we won't be selling single issues on our site. But right now we need people's support in buying a subscription, and you can do that by going to our website, fangoria.com. We're really proud of the website. It's the least website of all time. It's a total throwback to an old advertisement from the 80s, in the Lost Boys issue, by the way.
Really? Okay.
And so we recreated an old ad in the style of the 80s to make it kind of a fun retro site. We're really proud of it, and we've gotten great feedback. But on there's a giant red button that says click to subscribe, and it will take you to our Shopify account. It's $60 for 4 issues plus shipping and handling, so I think it comes out to about $68 in the U.S., and then overseas it gets more expensive with international shipping. But all I can say to anyone who is questioning the price, this thing is a beast. It's a new thing. I think that people are just going to have to blindly trust us on this, and I would hate for them to miss out. So we need their support. It's important to us that the community supports us with a subscription, especially in these early days, and that will give us more resources to do better work and things like that. So we're focused on subscriptions right now, fangoria.com, and that's how we can get everyone set up.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Dallas. Seriously, it was a pleasure to talk with you both, all of you, actually. I'm really glad that we got to reach out, and I hope to talk to you soon in the future, obviously. and I'll be one of the subscribers, so you don't have to worry
Great.
about that.
Yeah, we're releasing Puppet Master of the Littlest Reich through Fangoria August 17th in theaters and on demand. And then we're really proud of, we just announced that we're publishing our first novel, and it's called Our Lady of the Inferno, and it's just an incredibly awesome horror novel set in New York City in the 80s, and it's just terrific. Written by a dear friend of mine named Preston Fossil, who also works for Fangoria as well. So we've got a lot of good stuff coming out, and a
lot of media.
Sky's the limit. Yeah, a lot of media.
That's good. Yeah.
And then the magazine coming out, basically October 1st. So
awesome.
We're very proud.
Well, thank you so much, Dallas, for coming on, and we'll definitely catch you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I'll come back anytime.